Who is a beginner in the spiritual life? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is a podcast arm of Very Christie. Very Christie is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in the mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at verychristie.com. All right, gentlemen, this is episode 13 of our Intro to Spiritual Theology. We are halfway done with this series, introducing you guys to spiritual theology and to the principles of the spiritual life. In this episode, we are going to turn our attention to the Purgative Way, okay, which is the way of the interior life that has to do with beginners. Last month, we discussed the general means of perfection that are common to all souls that desire spiritual progress. Over the next 3 months, we'll discover the special means that are proper to each of the stages, okay? So traditionally, spiritual theologians have indicated there's 3 stages to spiritual growth: the Purgative Way, which we're going to talk about this month, the Illuminative Way, which we'll talk about next month, and the Unitive Way, which we'll talk in month 6, our final month. All right. And each one of these ways of the interior life, each one of these stages has its own principles, guiding principles to help a person grow. So, up to this point, like I said, we've talked about just general means of perfection that are true for everybody, no matter where they are in their spiritual life. Now, we're going to start giving you guys some more specific advice for each one of these stages so that wherever you are right now, you can have ideas. Okay, where do I grow? Where I'm at right now, and then what's coming in the future. That's the idea. So, all right. So this month, we're going to discuss the nature of the Purgative Way. All right. There's 5 episodes this month. I'm going to do an intro today, just to find who a beginner is. Then we're going to look at prayer for the beginner, called that the prayer of the apprentice. We're going to look at the role of penance for the beginner, the role of mortification, and then our warfare against deadly sins. That's the plan of attack this month. So intro, prayer, penance, mortification, warfare against deadly sins. All right. This week, we're going to discuss the nature of the Purgative Way by looking at the different categories of beginners and the first task of beginners, namely the purification of the soul. So, who is a beginner? In the spiritual life, beginners are those that habitually live in a state of grace and have a certain desire for perfection. Okay, so first thought here, this is a person who's habitually in a state of grace. They're in a state of grace most of the time. This is a person who has a general desire to grow in perfection, to become holy. Though, because they're a beginner, they may still have attachments to certain venial sins that they commit intentionally, and they may be exposed every now and again to fall into grievous sin, mortal sin. Okay. Who are we ruling out with this definition? We are ruling out of the class of beginners those who frequently commit mortal sins and do not avoid its occasions. Okay. I think this is kind of sad, but I think a lot of people in the contemporary Catholic Church would think of a beginner as like a saint. Okay. A beginner is a person, okay, who is habitually in a state of grace. There are lots of Catholics who are habitually in a state of mortal sin. Those are not beginners. So a guy who, skips mass every now and again on Sundays when he should be there, a guy who maybe be drinking or, getting drunk or using drugs or things like that, guys sinning against the 6th and 9th commandments on chastity periodically, these are not beginners. Guys who refuse to avoid the situations and people and times that lead to grievous sin, they don't seek to rid themselves of those occasions, those aren't beginners. Okay. Those are sinners. Those are worldlings. A person who's in that phase, and if that's you guys, it's best just to be honest about it and work on it. The person like that they need to free themselves of mortal sin, like through God's grace, of course. But the first step is get rid of that. Second, get yourself out of the situations that lead to mortal sin. Okay. That's the first task. Once you start doing those 2 things, you will enter the phase of the beginner because you'll be living habitually in a state of grace. And then we'll start working on your venial sins. Okay. All right. So let's say beginners. There's 3 kinds of beginners. First are innocent souls. These are young men, young women who desire to grow in the spiritual life, and they have not committed a lot of grievous mortal sins. Okay. They have not, quote unquote, um, sowed their wild oats, so to speak, as people my age would say. These people are generally innocent. This is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing when young people keep themselves free of mortal sin for the most part, and they want to grow in holiness. Awesome. Those are innocent souls. The second time are converts. Now, I am a convert. Okay, not just from Protestantism to Catholicism, though that's true. But a convert is a person who sinned grievously in the past, but they've returned to God with all sincerity and they press on towards perfection. Okay. I hope all five of my children can be categorized as innocent souls when they enter the purgative way. But there's people like me who did not make good choices, 20 years ago when I was a young man, and I've converted. Now, the nice thing about converts is they tend to be zealous, which is good. So innocent souls tend to have some zeal for the holiness. Beautiful. Converts tend to have zeal. The third kind of beginner is what's called a lukewarm soul. These are people who've genuinely given themselves to God and they do advance in the spiritual life. So they are making progress, but they have fallen into a state of tepidity. Okay. They're tepid. Okay. They're lukewarm. These are people that they're not zealous about striving. They don't have a lot of spiritual energy to, keep going. Not good. Okay. So people in lukewarm sort of souls, they're just not going to make the progress they need to make. Okay. So lukewarm, not good. You got to light a fire under their butts. Okay. Jesus says in the book of Revelation that he spits lukewarm people out of his mouth. Don't want to be that. Okay. So one step before we get to the application this month or this week, where are you? Are you guys beginners yet? If you're not a beginner yet, what do? We got to get rid of mortal sin. Got to get yourself out of the situations that draw you into sin, whatever those can be, public or private. Okay. Are you an innocent soul? Beautiful. Awesome. Keep growing. Are you a convert? Okay. Are you putting your wild ways behind you? Okay. Putting the sin behind you. Beautiful. That zeal's awesome. Are you lukewarm? We got to fan that flame. There's a flame in there. We got to fan it. Okay. Got to start building that thing. Feed it. Okay. All right. Those are our categories. What is the first task, no matter what stage you're in? The first task of beginners is a purification of the soul. Okay. Purification consists essentially in union with God through love. We are purified by being in loving friendship with God, but we cannot be united to him unless we are clean of heart. Okay. A state implying a twofold condition. So to be pure in heart, it's a twofold condition. What is it? One, atonement for past sins. We will have an entire lecture. Okay, I'll have a little 10 to 12-minute lecture for you guys on penance. We have to do penance for our former sins. Okay. Second, we have to detach from sin and the near occasions of them, whether they be mortal or venial. Got to get ourselves out of those situations. And we got to identify what those are. There may be people you can't hang out with. There may be kids' houses you can't go to. There might be places you can't go to. A near occasion sin might be you got to start leaving your cell phone on the kitchen counter at night. That might be a problem. Okay. We have to identify the times, people, and places that lead us to sin. We're going to get rid of those things. Okay. Now, when we're purifying the soul, our purification can be perfect or imperfect. Okay. It's important you guys know the difference in this. Imperfect purification is when you are motivated by fear and hope. Okay. Fear of hell and hope for heaven. Now, is that kind of purification bad? No. There's nothing wrong with when I first started taking my Christian faith seriously 20 years ago, I was motivated primarily because I didn't want to go to hell. Okay. And I wanted to go to heaven. That's what got me started. If that's where you are, that's great. Okay. That's good. Okay. Now, that purification's imperfect. Why? Notice the goal of the spiritual life is to love God. If your motivation is fear and hope, you're not motivated by love. That's what makes that purification imperfect. Perfect purification does not exclude fear and hope. You still have those, right? But the ruling motive for perfect purification is the love of God and the desire to please him. That's the ruling motivation. That's what we want to get to, guys. So if you're in a stage right now where you're motivated by the fact that you don't want to go to hell and you want to go to heaven, awesome. What you want to start asking God for is an increased intensity of love of him and a desire to please him, because that motivation will bind you to our Lord much more closely and will help you to stay on the path to perfection. So, all right, we are butting up against 10-minute mark, so I'm going to stop there. I hope you guys have a blessed week. Next week, we're going to look at what prayer should look like at the beginning phase. So I titled that lecture "Prayer of the Apprentice." So prayer of the apprentice. So we'll cover that next week. I hope you guys have a blessed week, and I'll see you next time.